When life breaks you, it doesn't always make a sound. Sometimes it shows up quietly. A call that ends a job, a message that ends a relationship, a diagnosis that ends certainty. It doesn't ask for permission, it just arrives and everything shifts. In those moments, your mind searches for something solid. This video is that anchor. To the Stoics, being broken wasn't failure. It was transformation. Pain wasn't something to avoid, but to examine, not a curse, but a calling. What feels like the end is often the beginning of becoming. When illusions fall, truth rises, and what's left behind isn't weakness. It's the raw material of a stronger self. These 12 Stoic truths aren't about forcing positivity. They're about facing life honestly, through grief, loss, and change, and finding your inner ground. If you're ready to stop resisting pain and start transforming through it, stay with me. Like and subscribe if this speaks to you. Let's begin.
Number 1.
Pain is not the enemy. Resistance is. Pain is not the villain we've been taught to fear. It's raw. It's real. But pain itself doesn't destroy us. Our resistance to it does. The Stoics believe that suffering emerges not from what happens to us, but from how we relate to it. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." This is the heart of Stoic thought. Pain may be inevitable, but suffering is often optional. When life hits us hard, our first instinct is to resist. We deny, we distract, we escape. We tell ourselves this shouldn't be happening, that life is supposed to be easier, more fair, but it's in that resistance, the mental protest, the clinging to comfort, the demand that life behave on our terms, where true suffering multiplies. Pain is one thing. The story we attach to it, that's what breaks us. Now pause and imagine doing something radically different. Instead of flinching, instead of panicking, you simply meet pain with presence. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of governing an empire and battling illness, wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." He was not suggesting we ignore pain. He was showing us how to remove the poison from it by dropping the resistance. Real strength isn't about suppression, it's about surrender to reality. And from that surrender comes a deeper form of power. Consider Viktor Frankl, though not a Stoic, his live philosophy resonates deeply with theirs. In the horror of a concentration camp, he discovered a truth. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. Even in the worst pain, he saw the possibility for meaning. This is what the Stoics meant when they said life doesn't break you. It reveals you. Pain is a revealer. It strips away illusions, dismantles ego, and shows us what remains. Sometimes that's uncomfortable, but discomfort is not danger. In fact, it's often the beginning of wisdom. Nature, too, reminds us of this. The forest regrows after the fire. The wound scars not to shame, but to seal. A pearl forms only after irritation. In this light, pain is not the enemy. It is the pressure that shapes the soul, the storm that carves the stone. So when pain arrives, don't resist it, don't curse it, sit with it, study it, let it speak. Because what you'll find is this: the moment you stop running from pain is the moment it starts to teach you. And in the school of Stoicism, pain is not the test, it's the teacher, and your willingness to learn is the path forward.
Number 2.
You don't need to be strong, you need to stay present. Strength is often misunderstood. In a world obsessed with performance, being strong usually means pretending you're not hurt, staying busy to avoid feeling, or putting on a smile when everything inside is collapsing. But to the Stoics, that's not strength. It's denial dressed up as discipline. And denial, no matter how polished, always leads to deeper suffering. True strength, the kind that transforms you, begins not with force, but with presence. It starts when you stop running from what you feel, when you sit with your grief, when you allow your heartbreak to speak, when you stop numbing your anxiety and start observing it. This is not weakness, this is clarity. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But proving doesn't mean suppressing, it means standing with yourself in the middle of the storm. Often, the impulse to appear strong drives us into hiding. We fake composure, we suppress emotions, we internalize the idea that breaking down is failure. But that kind of stoicism, the false kind, cuts us off from healing. Emotional suppression is not control, it's corrosion. The Stoic doesn't numb their feelings, they witness them, name them, and choose their response with care. Strength is not silence, it is sincerity. Consider Fred Rogers. He wasn't flashy, loud, or forceful, but he held an inner power that radiated through gentleness and truth. He didn't teach children to avoid feelings. He taught them to honor them, to say, "I feel sad," and not apologize for it, to breathe with their anger instead of shaming it. That is Stoic grace in action, meeting life with a soft yet immovable spirit. So when you feel overwhelmed, stop trying to be a hero. Let go of the script that says you must fix everything. Instead, return to your breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Remind yourself, presence is power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." That's not poetic fluff. That's the practice. Going inward, stopping the rush, being with what is. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to remain with yourself, to not abandon your inner post. In a world that rushes to react, presence is your rebellion. Because you don't need to be strong in the way the world defines it, you don't need to grit your teeth through pain or wear a mask of control. You only need to be present enough to feel, without flinching, to stay grounded when the ground shakes. That, the Stoics knew, is the rarest form of courage. Presence is not the absence of pain. It's the refusal to abandon yourself when pain arrives. Stay, witness, breathe. That is enough, and that, quiet, steady presence, is the most powerful strength of all.
Number 3.
Let the breakdown become the breakthrough. Most people think breaking down is the end, but the Stoics saw it differently. They believed that when life unravels, it isn't always destruction. It's often revelation. Something false is being stripped away, and what remains is something closer to the truth. The breakdown isn't the death of your story, it's the death of the illusion you were living under. Seneca once said, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." And when you're in a breakdown, when everything you knew begins to fall apart, simply choosing to stay with the pain, to not run, to not numb yourself is already a breakthrough. You are not failing, you are facing, and facing is where transformation begins. We're taught to bounce back quickly, patch the pain, smile, and move on. But Stoicism isn't interested in surface-level recovery. It teaches deep realignment. The collapse is not a mistake. It's often the only way through. What falls apart is what was never truly stable to begin with. The loss reveals what was built on illusion and what might finally be built on truth. Marcus Aurelius lived through plague, betrayal, and loss, yet he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This wasn't theoretical for him. It was lived truth. The breakdown, the pain, the fall. It's not a pause in the path. It is the path. It's where philosophy stops being words and starts being lived. Carl Jung is a perfect example. In his early 40s, his world collapsed. He severed ties with Freud, lost his intellectual certainty, and fell into chaos. But he didn't run from it. He faced it head-on. He entered the darkness of his unconscious, captured his visions in what became the Red Book. And from this descent emerged a deeper, clearer philosophy of the human soul. His contribution to psychology was born not from order, but from collapse. He became something new because he allowed the old to burn. The Stoics remind us, you don't heal by returning to who you were. You heal by letting go of that version entirely. The false self, the one built on perfection, approval, and fear, has to fall apart. And though that fall feels like death, it's actually the birth of something far more honest, something that can breathe. So don't rush your breakdown. Don't silence it with noise. Let it speak. Let it show you what's not working, what's no longer real, what needs to go. Because from that honesty comes a power that no external success could ever give you. Breakdowns happen when the soul can no longer carry the lie. Breakthroughs happen when the lie is finally released. And what rises from the ruins is not just a stronger version of you, but a truer one. One who no longer fears the fall, but trusts in what the fall reveals.
Number 4.
You can't heal what you refuse to face. The Stoics were brutally honest about one thing. Avoidance is the root of extended suffering. Pain that's buried doesn't disappear. It festers. And until you have the courage to look directly at what hurts, that pain will keep showing up, just wearing different faces, speaking through different patterns. Denial delays the healing that only truth can bring. Epictetus warned, it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. The same applies to healing. You cannot repair what you refuse to acknowledge. You can't resolve what you deny exists. Stoicism doesn't ask you to pretend nothing is wrong. It invites you to see clearly, without flinching, to look inward, not with judgment, but with courage. Avoidance is seductive. It whispers, you're fine, just move on. But beneath that surface calm is emotional residue that weighs down your spirit. You may call it fatigue, irritability, or overthinking, but at its core, it is unprocessed pain. Stoicism teaches that healing begins when you stop running and start observing, gently but honestly. And observing pain doesn't mean drowning in it. It means watching it, naming it, and letting it speak without being consumed. That's the Stoic practice, to create space between stimulus and response, to hold your experience without becoming it. Consider James Baldwin. Though not a Stoic by name, his life embodied their depth. He once wrote, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Baldwin confronted wounds, racism, betrayal, abandonment, and instead of numbing, he turned them into essays, into fire, into wisdom. He didn't flinch, and through that bravery, he created beauty from brokenness. Likewise, Marcus Aurelius didn't hide his despair. In his journal, he wrote of fear, fatigue, and failure, not to indulge it, but to understand it. And through understanding, he found clarity. That's the Stoic model. You don't run from the dark. You meet it, name it, and walk through it. Because when we avoid our wounds, we live under their shadow. But when we face them, we rise through their fire. That honesty is rare, but it's where freedom begins. The kind of freedom that doesn't depend on external calm, but on inner alignment. Healing is not a destination, it's a practice. And the first step of that practice is truth, not the filtered truth, the real one, the one you say only to yourself in the silence. That's where change starts. In the moment you stop escaping and begin listening. You cannot build peace on denial. You cannot access wisdom while pretending. What's buried will find its way back to the surface through anxiety, disconnection, or even physical illness. The Stoics understood this, and they taught, above all, that when you face what you fear, you dissolve its grip, not in one leap, but gently, breath by breath, truth by truth, moment by moment.
Number 5.
Suffering shared is suffering halved. In a culture that glorifies independence, many are taught to carry pain in silence. We're told to be strong, to handle it ourselves, to wear resilience like armor. But the Stoics, often misunderstood as emotionally detached, actually believed in the quiet power of connection. They knew that while solitude can strengthen, isolation can slowly dismantle the soul. There is a difference between being alone and being abandoned by your own pain. Seneca wrote dozens of letters to his friend Lucilius, not just to teach but to survive. He was processing his own struggles, grief, injustice, the erosion of time. Those letters weren't cold philosophy, they were a warm lifeline. In his words, you see a man searching not just for wisdom, but for witness. He was sharing his suffering not to dramatize it, but to metabolize it. And in doing so, his burden began to shift. Modern Stoicism is not about pretending nothing touches you. It's about choosing who you let in, and how deeply pain kept in silence often festers. It becomes a private echo chamber of shame, self-blame, and endless analysis. But pain spoken aloud to someone who can hold it without judgment begins to breathe. It gains space. It softens its grip. True resilience isn't about bearing everything alone. It's about knowing when the weight has become too much for one soul to carry. It's the wisdom to say, I need help, not out of desperation, but out of inner clarity. Marcus Aurelius, arguably the most powerful man of his time, still leaned on his mentors. Rusticus, Sextus, Maximus. They shaped his thinking, calmed his storms, and held his mind in balance. Even an emperor needed a mirror. And beyond philosophy, look at Maya Angelou. Her early life was marked by trauma, silence, and disconnection. But she found healing not by holding her story in, but by releasing it through memoir, through poetry, through presence. Her pain became a bridge, and that bridge was built by sharing, by transforming isolation into understanding. The Stoics never said, don't feel. They said, feel with discipline. They didn't say, don't speak. They said, speak with intention. Stoicism is not the rejection of emotion, it is the refinement of it. And one of the greatest refinements is knowing when silence strengthens and when speaking heals. If your burden feels too heavy, it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign you're human. And the most courageous thing you can do might not be to hold it tighter, but to let someone hold it with you. You were not built to carry everything alone. You were built to endure, yes, but also to connect, to sit across from another soul and say, me too. And in that moment, something shifts, not because the pain disappears, but because it is no longer hidden, it is seen, it is shared. And that, according to the Stoics, is where true strength begins. Number 6, your worst moment does not define you. There's a quiet lie that pain tries to sell you. That the moment you broke is the sum of who you are, that the failure, the mistake, the loss, that single moment is your entire identity. But the Stoics never accepted that lie. To them, identity wasn't forged in the moment of collapse, but in the moment after, in how you respond, how you rise, how you reclaim your center. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This wasn't a throwaway quote, it was survival. Born into slavery, Epictetus lived through hardship that could have easily defined him, but he refused to be reduced by his circumstances. He understood that adversity does not brand you. It reveals you, and what you do next is what builds you. Most people live trapped in a loop. One bad decision becomes a lifetime of guilt. One moment of weakness becomes a self-portrait. But that's not clarity, it's distortion. The Stoic view is different. Your worth is not measured by the worst thing that happened to you. Your worth is measured by what you do despite it. That shift in perspective is the beginning of healing. Look at Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks. He grew up in housing projects, watching his father struggle with job loss and hopelessness. By all external accounts, that background could have been his ceiling, but instead it became the foundation. He didn't let poverty define him. He let it inform him. He turned that hardship into a company that, at its best, tried to treat people with dignity. He didn't erase the past. He elevated it into purpose. Likewise, Marcus Aurelius endured loss, betrayal, and immense pressure as emperor. He failed at times, he faltered. But in his meditations, he wrote not as a flawless man, but as one constantly choosing the higher path, again and again. That's what Stoicism teaches. Character is not about never falling. It's about refusing to stay down when you do. And this is the critical point. When we believe our lowest point is our final form, we stop growing. But when we remember that identity is always in motion, shaped by choice, not circumstance, we begin to regain our power. Because shame has gravity, it pulls you into silence, into withdrawal, into false stories. But stories can be revised. Identity is not fossilized. It's fluid. Every breath is a blank space. Every action, a sentence, and you, the writer. So if you've been haunted by a past version of yourself, know this. You are not that moment. You are not the failure, not the wound, not the judgment. You are what comes next. You are the quiet decision to return to your values, to choose again, to rise without fanfare, simply because you can. That, to the Stoics, is dignity, and that's the only definition that matters. Number 7, let go of who you were supposed to be. Much of our suffering comes not from what's happening now, but from who we thought we were supposed to become. That version of ourselves we built in our heads. Always strong, always admired, always successful. The one who never failed, the one who never got left behind. But life, as the Stoics remind us, does not obey that fantasy. It breaks the illusion, and in doing so, offers something more honest. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." In the same way, the pain of falling short is often not about reality, but about the picture you painted in your mind. The pain of not becoming who you should be is the pain of misplaced expectation. An expectation, when rigid, becomes a trap. The Stoics never told us to chase perfection. They told us to align with nature, with truth, with presence, with what is. That includes the truth that you will change, you will evolve, and at some point, the image of who you were supposed to be becomes a burden, not a goal. Letting go of that imagined self is hard. It feels like grief. But grief is not just about losing people. It's about losing parts of yourself. Old roles, old dreams, old versions of you that no longer fit. The Stoic response isn't to suppress that grief. It's to walk through it with clarity. Look at Oprah Winfrey. For years, she tried to conform, to be quieter, more polite, more palatable. She chased approval, but real power came when she stopped asking, "Who should I be?" and started asking, "What is true for me?" She let go of the version others wanted and became the version rooted in truth. That's the Stoic idea of living in harmony with nature. Your nature, not society's expectations, not your childhood blueprint, but the quiet, evolving truth inside you. To live in resistance to that is to suffer. To live in flow with it is to breathe. This letting go is not weakness. It's not giving up. It's giving in to clarity. It's releasing the chase for a life that was never truly yours, and standing still long enough to meet the one that is. You're not here to perform a role. You're here to embody a reality, to show up honestly, simply, powerfully as who you are now. And that version, stripped of pretense, free from illusion, is already enough. And if that version feels unfamiliar, it's okay. Growth always feels like a stranger before it feels like home. Keep walking toward it. You'll recognize yourself there. And when you do, you'll realize you were never lost. You were just buried beneath expectations. Number 8, stillness is a form of courage. In a world obsessed with reaction, movement, and noise, stillness is often mistaken for weakness. But the Stoics knew better. To be still, not passive, but intentionally grounded, is an act of quiet bravery. It means choosing not to react when provoked. It means listening before speaking. It means observing what is without rushing to change or fix it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. Retreat into yourself." This isn't an escape, it's a return to clarity, a return to center. Stillness in the Stoic sense is not the absence of action, it's the presence of awareness. Most people confuse stillness with doing nothing. But the truth is, stillness is often the most difficult thing to do. It requires you to face your own thoughts, to sit with discomfort, to not hide behind busyness. The courage here is in choosing to feel rather than flee. It's easy to stay distracted, but clarity doesn't live in distraction. It lives in the pause. Take Viktor Frankl, for instance. In the darkest of human conditions, he discovered a kind of inner stillness between what was happening to him and how he chose to respond. That space, he said, is where human freedom lives. He could not control the outside, but inside he found the power to choose his meaning. That was stillness, and it was strength. The Stoic doesn't rush. They don't flinch. They don't let urgency dictate their direction, because they know that most mistakes are made in haste. Most words regretted are spoken in heat. Most pain prolonged is pain reacted to, not pain accepted. Stillness interrupts that cycle. It gives you space to see clearly. And from that clarity comes power. The kind of power that doesn't need to prove anything. It just is. Think of someone like Fred Rogers. His demeanor was calm, measured, even slow. But that stillness was never weakness. It was strength. He made people feel seen, not because he talked over them, but because he slowed down enough to hear them. That's the courage of presence. And presence is not a passive thing. It's not just sitting still. It's standing firm. It's not retreat. It's root. In the whirlwind of expectations and fear and reactivity, stillness becomes your anchor. It is how you stay rooted when everything around you pulls them. So in a world that shouts, choose silence. In a world that rushes, choose stillness. It will feel uncomfortable at first. It may even feel like you're being left behind. But in truth, you're stepping ahead. Into a life not dictated by chaos, but directed by clarity. And when the world finally quiets down, you'll realize you didn't miss anything. You gained everything that matters. Number 9, you are allowed to begin again. Sometimes the hardest chains to break are the ones we placed on ourselves. The shame of a misstep, the echo of regret, the lie that says, because you failed once, you must live in that failure forever. But the Stoics, grounded in wisdom, not illusion, taught us something else. That renewal isn't reserved for the perfect, it's available to the willing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength includes the power to begin again, not when it's convenient, not when others approve, but now, in this very breath. The present moment is the door. All you have to do is walk through it. Yet many don't. Why? Because they believe they must wait until they've healed, fixed everything, or somehow become worthy of a new start. But healing doesn't happen before the first step. It happens during it. Stoicism isn't about becoming flawless. It's about becoming conscious enough to know that every morning is a chance to redirect your life, and that the past, while real, doesn't have the final word unless you hand it the pen. Consider the life of Maya Angelou. Her early years were marked by trauma, silence, poverty, and yet, through writing, through truth-telling, through relentless self-expression, she began again. Not once, but again and again. Each time, not because she forgot the past, but because she refused to let it define the limits of her becoming. That is the Stoic posture. Forward-facing, present-rooted. It doesn't deny what happened, but it also doesn't kneel to it. Instead, it stands up. It resets, and it takes the next right step. Beginning again doesn't require perfection. It requires humility. The humility to say, I don't know where this road leads, but I know I'm not staying where I am. That moment of honesty is the birth of change, and with each step, momentum builds, not from force, but from alignment. Think of the seasons. Nature doesn't cling to summer. It doesn't shame itself for the cold of winter. It transforms quietly, faithfully, again and again. So must we. Each moment holds that same silent invitation. Return to yourself. Begin again. And here's the truth most people forget. No one is keeping score the way you think they are. Most people are too busy carrying their own regrets to tally yours. So set it down, reset your pace, begin again. Because you're not late, you're just ready. Even the Stoics, those masters of resilience, began again daily. They treated each sunrise not as a continuation, but as a fresh invitation to practice wisdom with greater clarity, greater compassion, and greater strength. So take a breath. Take the step, because the future isn't waiting. It's unfolding beneath your feet. Number 10. Your scars are not shameful, they are sacred. We live in a culture obsessed with appearances. Smooth skin, flawless records, perfect timelines. But Stoicism teaches us to look beneath the surface, to find beauty not in what's untouched, but in what's endured. A scar in the Stoic eye is not a flaw. It's a record of survival, a mark of return, a quiet sign that you have gone to the depths and come back stronger. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." In that spirit, every emotional wound you've endured, every heartbreak, every loss, every setback is not a blemish on your worth, but a testament to your resilience. You have felt deeply, fallen hard, and still risen. That rising is not invisible. It shows, and it should. In Japanese kintsugi, broken pottery is repaired with gold, not to hide the cracks, but to honor them. The break becomes the highlight. The fracture becomes the story. The object becomes more valuable, not less. This is the Stoic understanding of our emotional scars. They are not something to erase. They are something to illuminate. Consider someone like Stephen Hawking, diagnosed with a degenerative illness at 21. Most people wrote his story as over, but he didn't. Instead of hiding his condition, he embraced it. He let it shape him, not destroy him. His physical limitations became a backdrop, not a barrier, to his mental expansion. His legacy wasn't despite the damage. It was built through it. So too with you, your scars, emotional, physical, spiritual, are not liabilities. They are signatures of your becoming. They tell a story of weathering the storm, of not giving up, of returning wiser. That wisdom is sacred, and in many ways it's the most beautiful part of you. Yet many people try to cover them. They hide the depression they overcame, They hide the betrayal they endured. They hide the insecurity they still wrestle with. But in doing so, they cut off the part of them that made them human. Stoicism calls you not to wear your scars as pity, but as proof. Proof that you kept walking when everything inside you said stop. The world doesn't need your perfection. It needs your authenticity, and authenticity is forged, not fabricated. It comes from standing up again and again when life knocks you down. That act, small, quiet, invisible to most, is what makes you radiant. So do not flinch when you see your scars in the mirror. Do not shrink when others question your path. The wound was never the end, it was the invitation. The gold is in the crack. And when you honor that crack, not as a weakness, but as a window, you begin to see your pain wasn't in vain, it was the portal. Number 11, everything changes. Even this. When pain arrives, it doesn't knock. It barges in and makes itself at home. It rearranges your days, unsettles your sleep, takes your appetite, and clouds your thinking. And in that fog, one illusion begins to form. The belief that this will last forever, that you'll never smile again, never breathe without the weight pressing down. But Stoicism reminds us of a quieter, deeper truth. Impermanence, the understanding that everything, joy, sorrow, success, loss, is in motion. Nothing stays, everything passes, even this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom yourself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change the things which are, and to make new things like them." He wasn't just speaking as a philosopher. He was speaking as a man who buried children, led an empire through plague, and still found clarity in the chaos. Change is the only constant. And while that can feel terrifying, it is also a doorway, because if nothing stays the same, then neither will your suffering. No season lasts forever, no feeling, no wound, no despair is eternal unless you hold on to it. Look at someone like Nelson Mandela. He was imprisoned for 27 years, and in those years, it would have been easy, reasonable even, to believe that injustice was permanent, but it wasn't. History turned, winds shifted. His suffering did not last forever, and neither will yours. Yet in our hardest moments, our minds lie. They whisper, "It will always be like this." That lie keeps us stuck. It steals hope. It distorts the truth. But when we return to the Stoic lens, we reclaim perspective. We remember that change is not something to fear. It's something to work with. When we forget that change is inevitable, we cling. We tighten our grip on the past or obsessively try to control the future. Both create suffering. But when we lean into change, when we accept that life flows like a river, we find peace in the current. We stop resisting. We begin to trust. And yes, trust is hard, especially when everything inside you feels broken. But trust isn't a feeling. It's a decision, a daily one. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to remember this. No pain, no joy, no chapter is final. Every breath is a turning page. That doesn't mean we numb out. It means we notice. It means we tell ourselves in the middle of the storm, even this will pass, not to escape it, but to endure it with grace. And when it does pass, we are changed, not in spite of the storm, but because of it. Number 12, you are not broken, you are becoming. There are days when the weight feels unbearable, when the loss is so deep or the betrayal so sharp, that you look in the mirror and don't recognize who you are anymore. Something in you feels shattered, and the world, quick to label, whispers, "You're broken." But the Stoics would say otherwise. They would tell you, you are not broken, you are becoming. This isn't just poetic comfort, it's Stoic clarity, Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In other words, it's not the event that defines you. It's the transformation that follows. The pain didn't end you. It began something quieter, deeper, and more enduring than what came before. Becoming is messy. It looks like confusion. It sounds like silence. It feels like being lost. But buried in that discomfort is movement. Not backward, not stagnant, but forward, inward. You are being carved into someone truer, stronger, and more aligned with what matters. Pain is not a sign of your failure. It's a sign of your reformation. Consider the life of Frida Kahlo. She lived with chronic physical agony, betrayal, and emotional devastation. But through that pain, she painted, not to escape it, but to give it form. Her work was raw, unfiltered, and alive. It didn't hide the wounds. It made them sacred, and through that process, she didn't break. She became. The Stoics never promised a life without suffering. What they promised was a path through it, a way to remain whole even when the world calls you broken. That path demands perspective. It demands that you look at your wounds not as endings, but as thresholds, because every breakdown you survive plants a seed of power, and with time, that seed grows into wisdom. So no, you're not broken. You're molting, shedding illusions, releasing identities that no longer fit. And yes, that hurts. But it's also the mark of change, the sign that your soul is evolving, that you're outgrowing what once defined you. And here's what most people forget. Becoming doesn't look impressive. It often looks like rest, like stillness, like pulling away to recalibrate. But underneath that quiet is a deep reconstruction. You're not falling apart. You're falling inward, to a self that's more real than the one who came before. Even Marcus Aurelius, in the solitude of his private journals, wrestled with these inner ruptures. He wrote to himself not to project strength, but to return to his center, to remind himself that every loss, every fear, every inner storm was part of a deeper rebirth. So if today feels like everything is unraveling, let it. Let the old threads loosen. Let the false layers drop. You're not broken. You're becoming more honest, more grounded, more you. Pain doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're being redirected. And the 12 truths you've just heard, they're not just philosophy, they're road signs for the soul. Stoicism doesn't teach us to be numb. It teaches us to be present, to look pain in the eye and say, "You will not destroy me, you will refine me." So when life breaks you, remember, it's not the end. It's the beginning of something real, something resilient, something whole. You are not a ruin, you are a reconstruction in progress. If this message resonated, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because here, we walk through the fire, but we walk through it together, and every week you'll find new truths to anchor you deeper into who you truly are. Keep going. The path is hard, but so are you.